The NCAA has never heard of the adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They decided it's broke, but we're going to fix it, and then we're going to add tweaks that maybe no one was asking for. Okay, so the new college football playoff from 4 to 12, but now the 4 highest-ranked conference champions only will be seeded 1 through 4, and everyone else has got to fight for the rest 5 through 12, leaving someone like Notre Dame, if they're the #1 overall team in the nation, out of the top 4. Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On College Football joins me now. And Spencer, this seems like a solution in search of a problem to me. Can you make the case for why this makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, the move to a 5+7 format makes a whole heck of a lot of sense, actually, with the Pac-12's implosion, RIP. But I think that for college football, there are so many changes going on right now. It can be hard to keep track of, what's happening. Why is it happening? Is this good? This is actually a good change. Now, it's not good that this change has to happen to go to the 5+7 instead of the 6+6, but it's good that it has happened, because what you're going to have now in the playoff is it'll be comprised of the 5 highest ranked conference champions plus 7 at-large teams, which will be the next 7 highest ranked teams in the college football playoff standings, just as we have seen them unveil, in their top 25 for the last couple of years. So it will certainly get complicated and dicey, and we'll have the same conversations that a lot of people think are going to be fixed in a 12-team playoff. We're just going to have them about teams that have a much lower chance of actually winning a national championship, which is why I'm opposed to expansion of the playoff, but this is where we are, and they might not even be done expanding the playoff one day because they haven't agreed to a format for 2026 and beyond. But for the next 2 years, you'll have the 5 highest ranked conference champions so that the group of 5 can get a team into the playoff every single year, because you only have 4 power conferences. So the next team that gets in is like what happened with Liberty this year. They went undefeated. They won Conference USA. They were ranked above SMU, who won the American. They got into the Fiesta Bowl. They got drubbed by Oregon, but they had an opportunity to do that. So the group of 5 who, got into the 12 or the 14 playoff rather, and were wanting more access, they get guaranteed access to it with at least one team every single season. I think it'll probably be one team every year. You would need a pretty remarkable set of circumstances to get multiple G5 teams in there. But this move makes sense because if you had kept it where the format was, which was 6+6, that model was created with the Pac-12 existing, but the Pac-12 does not exist, right? At least not technically speaking. Legally speaking, it does. It is still an entity, but they don't have 8 teams in there, which is the minimum. They have 2, and they have a 2-year grace period to try and rebuild that conference. But in the meantime, Oregon State and Washington State automatically getting into the playoff every year, that wouldn't have made any sense. So you would have had 2 group of 5 champions getting in. That's why this 5+7 move makes a lot of sense.
This seems like, to set it up this way, almost incentivizes people to say, we're not going to branch off on our own. We're going to stay in the conferences such as they are. And someone like a Notre Dame, hey, go join the ACC, go join the Big Ten, go figure this out if you want to play with the big boys. It almost seems like they are encouraging some of the things that there have been complaints about when it comes to the coalescing of teams around these what are now power conferences.
Well, I think that it depends on which conference you are currently competing in, because I think if you're in the Big 12 or the ACC, this should actually incentivize you to play tough games, because now you have an extra at-large berth available. Well, who is that in theory going to go to? The Big 10 and or the SEC, because those are the best conferences. So those teams are going to get a benefit of the doubt on their schedule, because there is still a subjective element to this playoff. There always will be in college football. There are too many teams. You have to have a selection. You can't have a 128 team playoff. You can't have the equivalent of what you see in the National Basketball Association, for instance, which I just laid out the acronym for reasons I can't even explain right now. The NBA gets 20 of its 30 teams into the playoff, which I think is absurd, and I think it's really, really dumb on the part of the NBA. If the equivalent in college football would be 60% of 128. I can't do that math really well right off the top of my head, but you would have dozens and dozens of teams. You can't do that. You can't do that. So you have to have a subjective committee to put teams in, and the 5+7 format incentivizing conference championships, certainly it doesn't help Notre Dame, but the 12-team playoff helps Notre Dame a great deal because they always play a really strong schedule. They've got some built-in rivalries with teams like USC that are going to bolster their strength of schedule and give them opportunities for quality wins. in. So I don't think they're going to be hurt by it in a big way. I think this is the right move. Given the landscape, it shouldn't have had to come to this, but this is where we are at, and this move had to be made.
Stay up to date all year on college football by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On College Football on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube.